A viewer commented on the ghost story about Jed, which took place in west of Ypsilanti, just west of Ypsilanti, which, if you think about it, is just Ann Arbor. But when it comes to Gundella, one's never sure where the location is because she always changed the names of the persons so they wouldn't be harassed. And she sometimes changed the locations or muddled the location to be unfindable, so to speak. Of course, this is back in the 70s and 80s when things weren't so easy to find. Anyway, I found it, her rendition of the story, that the which takes a different angle than the newspaper article in the Detroit News. This starts with Jed's perspective, him basically his last years, and there's also it's from this book, The Werewolf of Grosse Pointe from 1976. But since I don't want to open this book to hold it to read, I'm just going to read the scanned version that I have that I scanned years ago. So here it is. Old Dead, You're Jed. Jesus. Old Jed, You're Dead. Jed and Sarah Taylor had lived for more than 40 years in their two-story frame house on a quiet street in Ann Arbor. Jed had even built the addition on the house himself, adding 2 bedrooms as their family had grown. Their children grew up, married, and established homes of their own. Soon, Jed and Sarah had grandchildren and even great-grandchildren who visited often and filled the house with love and laughter. But things were changing. Jed had developed terminal lung cancer, and sadness hung over the once happy home. Sarah was getting up in years herself, and her health was not as good as it once was. It became harder and harder for her to take care of her husband. Feeding him, bathing him, and turning him in his bed soon became more than she could handle. So it was decided that Jed must be put in a nursing home to spend his last days. He did not want to go. He begged to be allowed to die at home, but that was out of the question, and he was moved to a suitable establishment near his daughter's home. Pardon, we gotta change the page. Not wanting to stay there without him, Sarah closed up the house and went to live with their daughter. A house standing empty quickly deteriorates. Since Sarah knew she could never live without Jed, she instructed their oldest son, who was handling their financial affairs, to sell the house as soon as possible. And so it was that while Jed was still lying in the nursing home begging and pleading to be taken back to his own house, Donald and Elaine Parker purchased the house and happily moved into it with their 18-month-old son. When they had been living there almost a month, Elaine took the baby and went shopping with the lady next door. When the 2 women returned home, they noticed someone standing at the upstairs window, looking out. It appeared to be an old man wearing pajamas and a bathrobe. "My land," remarked the neighbor. "I swear that's old Jed Taylor." "What's he doing in your house?" "I don't know," answered Elaine, "but let's find out right now." They unlocked the door and went inside. They searched the house upstairs and down and found not a sign of anyone anywhere. When Elaine told Donald about it that evening, explaining that both she and the neighbor had clearly seen the old man through the upstairs window, he laughed and said they were both seeing things. He said that perhaps the sun shining on the house across the road reflected on the window and caused an optical illusion. Elaine said no more about it, and the incident was forgotten until the weekend. On Saturday, Don's brother David came over and asked if he might borrow some of Don's tools. Don said that he could, and told him to go down to the workbench in the basement and help himself. At the foot of the stairs, David came face to face with an old man dressed in pajamas, robe, and slippers. He was startled, for his brother had not told him anyone was down there. "What do you want?" asked the elderly gentleman. "I came to get some of my brother's tools," answered David. "Take them all," said the older man. "They don't belong here anyway." David took what he wanted and went back upstairs. "Who's the old guy in the basement?" he asked his brother. "What old guy? There's no one down there," replied Donald. "Yes, there is," said David. "I was just talking to him." Both men went downstairs. There was no one there, but when David described the visitor, it sounded like the same person Elaine had seen in the window. Donald could not dismiss both of these incidents as figments of their imagination. The next door neighbor had seen him, too, and had said that it appeared to be Mr. Taylor, the former owner of the house. Obviously, the old fellow had run away from the nursing home and was hiding somewhere on the premises. After all, he had built part of this house and had lived in it for over 40 years. He most likely knew of some crawl space they had not yet discovered. The thing to do, of course, was to call Mr. Taylor's daughter and tell her that her father was here. The daughter answered the phone, listened to what Donald had to say, and then told him, "I'm sorry, Mr. Parker, but you must be mistaken. My father died almost a week ago." Old Jed continued to make his presence known. One day when Donald was at work and the baby was napping, Elaine decided to relax in the hot bath. She left the bathroom door open so that she might hear her baby if he woke up. Jed showed up and admonished her for having no modesty. "Young lady, if you must bathe in my house, at least have the decency to close the bathroom door." And so saying, he slammed it shut. Finally, Elaine decided that either Jed had to go or she would, and she convinced Donald to hire someone to perform an exorcism. Obviously, old Jed did not know that he was dead. He still claimed ownership to his house. The witch who exorcised him did so by showing him the dust from his grave and telling him he was free to go and leave worldly things to the earthbound. And that ends kind of abruptly, but I guess that's it. The story also appears in Gundella's Michigan Haunts and Hauntings, which is basically just the updated version of the Werewolf of Grosse Pointe and other stories. Plus, it has a few, I think it might have a few extra stories. But the story appears under the section of exorcism and is called Show Me the Way to Go Home. I do believe it's basically the same story. I didn't read them both just now, but when it gets to the end part, what's the part? No, there is some more to it. Maybe I'll just read this one after. It's just much easier instead of conflating the two. All right, that's all. I'll read this one later.